Welcome to the Your Take podcast. Welcome on into the podcast. It's been a great 2 weeks, a great start to the NBA season. Today, me and Jim will be discussing who the top 5 sidekicks have been in the Orlando bubble. We kind of were talking a little bit before this, and we both have kind of said that the top 5 sidekicks that we've seen are not exactly the guys that we expected it to be when the bubble started. So definitely looking forward to getting into that and debating that. But first, let me introduce Jim.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jim. Fort Wayne, Indiana native, so big Pacers fan. Unfortunately, I just watched the Pacers lose to the Heat, which is unfortunate. But, I still have hope. They're a good team, and we'll hopefully bounce back in these last couple games before we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, so we're going to be jumping in, doing a little bit of a deep dive into that Pacers Heat game a little bit later on the pod. But first, Jim, I know we kind of talked about it. I know you mentioned in my Instagram comments a couple days back that you thought Porzingis, you were disappointed that I did not put Porzingis on that little picture of some of the top sidekicks that we've seen so far in the bubble. And I actually had Porzingis when I was looking back at watching some games, watching some of the stats. I actually wound up ranking Porzingis my number one sidekick that we've seen in the bubble so far. For me, I like to include, I think record is a really big part of this as well, which is why you'll see later I kind of didn't include some other guys. But Mavericks going 3-2. They had that big win over the Bucks. They should have beaten the Rockets earlier in that first game of the bubble. They've had some really good games. Porzingis is averaging 29, 10 boards, shooting some really nice. He's shooting over 50% from two, and he's taken 49 free throws in only 5 games. So I had Porzingis number one. Who do you have as kind of your top guy, your top sidekick in the bubble so far?
See, it's funny you say that because I also have Kristaps as my number one guy. Because it's funny, I did say that on the Instagram, and I was like, I'll kind of toss it out there because, I'm a big Kristaps fan. But then when I actually went back and looked at the stats, he's a 330 or 30 plus point games. He's averaging. I mean, from all the players I've seen, especially he complements Lucas so well with what they do in their game. My only thing I would say he probably needs to work on more is using his size in the paint, because obviously we know he can stretch the floor, but his rebound, I mean, he's averaging 10 rebounds, but with his size, he could easily be averaging 12 or 13. So I feel like he definitely is my number one guy, but he could probably use his size to his advantage a little more.
For me to nitpick his game a little bit, he's been a good floor stretcher, a great shooter. He's only been shooting 27% from 3 in the bubble. So actually possibly something for him to improve on, and possibly he could maybe really make a big jump and make the Mavs even better. I think the Mavs as a team, actually, if you look at some of their losses, they've had some really, really poor shooting numbers. So if he can get those 3-point percentages up, the Mavs could really give even a team like the Clippers a nice run for their money, especially because they don't really have a legit big that could probably guard Porzingis. Maybe you could throw a Zubac on him, but Porzingis is so much more athletic. Who did you have as who's your second sidekick? Or you can give me however many you want to give me. What your list looks like for those top 5 sidekicks.
Okay, my number 2 was Jalen Brown, and I know Quigley, my buddy, will be really excited about that. But I watched a lot of Celtics games with him throughout the season this year, and I haven't watched that many in the bubble, but Jalen Brown has been low-key kind of killing it. Dude's averaging 21.6 points a game and 7 boards. The Celtics are 4-2 so far. I also thought that record going into this was a very important thing to look at. He's played in all 6 of their games, and he has scored the most, if not the second most, in every game he's played but one, where I think Gordon Hayward might have got him. But low me are the future of that franchise. So I think for that, the Celtics moving forward,
for me, Jalen Brown just did not quite make my list. He was kind of one of the guys that I had 6th and 7th. But I definitely agree that he's been fantastic. I think it's also kind of tough with that team. You got Gordon Hayward and Kemba Walker as well. It's really hard to, obviously Jalen Brown is their second best guy, but they have so many like other guys around him that it kind of makes it hard that he's like the definitive sidekick, I guess I would say. For me, my number 2 guy and is Michael Porter Jr. Only 22 years old, and I think the Denver Nuggets were missing Jamal Murray just until tonight's game against the Lakers and the previous game, and the Nuggets have still managed to go 3-2 in that time span. The Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic pick and roll and just like their 2-man game was kind of what carried the Nuggets offense throughout the entire season. And I really think I was really worried with Jamal Murray being out for such a long time that they were really going to struggle. And, Michael Porter Jr. came up. He's averaging almost 26 points a game, over 2 rebounds. He's averaging a block and a steal. You look at his shooting numbers. He's shooting 42% from 3 on 38 attempts. He's 24 of 25 from the free throw line. And he's just been absolutely killing it. Kind of looking at some of the advanced statistics, he's been an elite rebounder. He has really high block and steal rates. And I think he's just done a fantastic job of stepping up when Jamal Murray was not able to go. And I think that going into the playoffs, the Nuggets kind of now have this little 3-headed monster of Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, and Nikola Jokic that we didn't really see in the regular season. Michael Porter Jr. played not as much, and he never really looked as effective or as efficient as we've seen now. But, I mean, he's hot, and I'm really excited to see. I know when I last looked, the Lakers were up 5 at halftime on the Nuggets, but I'm excited to kind of see like what this 3-headed monster can do, and now they get a couple games together with the 3 of them.
Yeah, no, I honestly didn't even consider Michael Porter Jr. That's a solid pick. That's a very good sleeper guy.
Who'd you have third?
I had Kyle Lowry as my number 3. The Raptors, despite losing Kawhi, are still playing very well. And I mean, Kyle Lowry to me has always kind of been the second man in Toronto. I mean, he was number 2 with DeMar, number 2 with Kawhi, and I feel like Pascal's kind of taken over that new mantle of the franchise player. And I feel like Kyle Lowry's okay with that. He is a great complementary player. I mean, he's averaging 18.8 points a game. They've won 5 of their 6 games they've played. Like, they're getting it done without Kawhi, which is what everyone thought they would struggle with. I mean, they're the second best team in the East, and so I feel like that really solidified Kyle Lowry on the list for me.
Me, I did not. I also did not. Kind of like you didn't have Michael Porter. I actually didn't even think about Kyle Lowry. I guess he just literally slipped my mind. That's kind of the cool thing about this like little activity with top 5 sidekicks. There's so many guys out there that have been really balling in the bubble that like are outperforming what we saw in the regular season. My third guy is Paul George. The Clippers only are 3-3 in the bubble. I think the record-wise, it could be a little bit better. But I think that Kawhi's missed a few games, and Paul George has done a really nice job of stepping up. And you'll kind of look at his numbers specifically, 25 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, nearly 2 steals a game. And I think the most impressive thing for me was plus 37 in 5 games. So even, I guess, when the Clippers have been losing games, like when he's been on the floor, like they've been getting it done. He's 20 of 39 from 3. He's shooting 87% from the line. His steals, his assists, and I really think that Paul George is kind of, I don't know. I feel like obviously Kawhi Leonard's a much better match for him than Russell Westbrook was, and it obviously makes it a little bit easier when you have another elite wing defender on the floor. But I think Paul George has really popped off in the bubble and is kind of making the Clippers look like a scary team. And I'm excited to see once they get Montrezl Harrell back. Once the Clippers are at full strength again, like they really can make a run. Did you have Paul George on your list by any chance? Did he make it for you?
I did. Paul George is actually my number 4, the next guy up on my list. I would like to cite a lot of the same reasons you did. He is in Kawhi's shadow, but he still goes out and performs. Like, dude's a stud. I mean, as a Pacers fan, he was a stud in Indianapolis. I was really sad when he left, and I'm sad he kind of hates the franchise now, but dude is just an outright baller. Like, that's all I got to say. He puts the ball in the hoop and kind of just always finds a way to get it done. So, I mean, as much as I'm sad that he's gone, it would be nice to see him succeed with the Clippers. I wouldn't be angry if he did.
Yeah, and I think that one of the cool things about having Paul George and Kawhi Leonard on the floor together is I'm kind of going a little bit of a Clippers tangent really quickly, but if you're playing a team, let's say the Lakers for example, and now you got LeBron, you have to cover LeBron. Well, you can have Paul George or Kawhi, one of them on LeBron, and the other one is on someone else, and whoever's not on LeBron on offense, they're just going to be so much more, have a lot more energy and not be as gassed from LeBron. So that's kind of like a cool little thing to have. Two such elite wings that are great defenders is that one of them is always going to be, for the most part, pretty energetic and not being tired from the defensive side of things.
Yeah, no, I agree. Honestly, when the offseason kind of came to an end and both Paul George and Kawhi chose to go there, I really thought that they should change their name from the LA Clippers to LA Clampers because they were just going to have everyone with clamps, like Pat Bev, Paul George, Kawhi. Like, you got three guys right there that can lock up most dudes in the league. So that's a tough defensive team to go up against. I mean, I don't care what you have offensively. Like, those guys can lock it down.
For me, my fourth guy, I actually went with. So this is tough for me. I went with Yusuf Nurkic. I was looking at the Blazers. I was trying to figure out if I considered C.J. McCollum or Yusuf Nurkic like the quote unquote sidekick of that team. I think obviously in the regular season when Nurkic was out, it was clearly going to be McCollum. But the biggest thing that the Blazers, first of all, are 4-2. They beat the Rockets. They beat the. I'm blanking right now, but they have some really nice wins on their schedule or on the games that they played so far, and they look like they might actually be able to sneak into this 8 seed and not only get to the play-in game, but honestly they might be the actual 8 seed and not have to win 2 in a row, but only have to win 1. And Nurkic, I mean, he's averaging almost 19 points, over 10 boards, almost 5 assists, 2.5 blocks per game, and he's shooting 91% from the free throw line on 34 attempts. And the biggest thing that the Trailblazers were missing the entire season, their offense has been elite. There's no doubt about it that they've been elite on offense. They have not had Hassan Whiteside's been you look at the advanced analytics, Hassan Whiteside's a stud, but when you actually watch in games, they've been missing a rim protector and an interior defender to really kind of put the Blazers up onto that next level. And I know, unfortunately, Embiid got hurt, and we only got to see Embiid versus Nurkic for about 5-6 minutes last night. But in those 5-6 minutes, Nurkic did a really good job on Embiid. I think Embiid had, in the first quarter, only had 2 points, only made 1 field goal. And a lot of that was because of Nurkic's defense. And I think we've seen similar things in other Blazers games throughout. His passing, he's one of the highest assist rates for any big man that we've seen in Orlando so far. And I think that this Nurkic, McCollum, Lillard trio could really give the Lakers some trouble in that first round if they're able to make it out of the play-in game.
Which honestly, I hope they do because that'll be some must-watch first-round action. I had CJ in my pre-bubble list, but unfortunately, no Blazers players made it into my actual bubble list. So my fifth player, I went with Chris Middleton because he's the only guy actually on my list for the bubble that was on my pre-bubble list. And
Paul George didn't make your pre-bubble list? I'm surprised by that.
Paul George did not make my pre-bubble list. No, I feel like Paul George didn't play enough as some of the, like, if you hear some of the explanations on my other guys, you might understand why I didn't put Paul George on there. But I chose Chris Middleton because of the guys I had on my list, like, he's been playing the best in the bubble, at least from my previous list. And I mean, him and Giannis, obviously not in the bubble. They've been losing a decent amount of games, but they still have the best record in the NBA. Like, the way he complements Giannis, because Giannis still is kind of developing this three a little bit more. We saw some practice of him getting better, and I mean, he's tried to pull it out in the games, but like, Chris Middleton really gives that team what it needs in the fact of a true sidekick of Giannis is going to drive, everyone's going to collapse. You kick it out to Chris Middleton, and he's going to go for anywhere from high teens to like mid 20s. And I mean, he's had he's had, I think, 2 30-point games this bubble. So that's why he got the last spot for me.
Chris Middleton was my sixth guy, like literally just missed who I had. Kind of backing up what you said, he's shooting 42% from 3. He hasn't missed a free throw in the entire bubble. He's 21 for 21. My fifth guy, definitely not someone I expected to be on this list, but after a 6-0 start, I had to give it to Deandre Ayton. I think the Phoenix Suns, I mean, 6-0, like, come on. And Devin Booker's obviously carrying the team. He's the dog. We've seen all of his highlights, the game winner, just some of the half court three he made earlier today. But Deandre Ayton is averaging 18 points, nearly 10 boards, and over a block a game. He's shooting 56% from the field, and I think he's just been a really elite rim protector. And I think he's the second guy to Booker, and without him, the Suns would not be where they are today. Definitely was not, when I was actually making this list, he was not someone I even expected to be on it at all. But kind of once I watched a little bit of Suns tape, looked at some of his stats, I just couldn't leave DeAndre Ayton off. Like, how are you going to leave off the second best player on a 6-0 team in the bubble? It was really hard to do.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I really wanted to look and find a Suns player because being 6-0 is good. But the thing I thought about was, is being 6-0 really the best thing for the Suns right now? Like, if they squeak into the playoffs by some odd miracle, is that better than getting maybe another pick in the lottery? I mean, I know they're probably going to, like, we all heard Draymond the other day. Devin Booker's got to leave. And, like, I don't really say I disagree. Devin Booker does got to leave. And, like, maybe they think if they get in the playoffs, it'll entice him to stay because they're, like, trending in the right direction. But from what I've seen as the Suns, I wanted to put someone from, like, DeAndre Ayton would have been the guy from the Suns I would have put on. But I just, for their franchise, I don't know if this is the right move.
For me, I get what you're saying. I just I don't exactly get how. I know people have been saying that Devin Booker needs to leave, needs to be on a different team. I just don't think it's like feasible to actually consider, like, I don't think the Suns, it would take the biggest trade for the Suns to part with Devin Booker. I mean, you got this guy, he just signed a 5-year extension. I think he signed through like 2023, 2024 season. And that I think if DeAndre Ayton keeps playing like this, and if the Suns are able to come back next year, Ayton's a little even more better, Booker's better. So maybe some of the other guys on the team will step up. We'll see what they do in free agency. But I think that the Suns might actually, if Ayton can keep playing like this, could potentially be making a case for Booker to want to stay. Because really, Booker really has zero leverage with talking about a trade because he's on a 5-year contract.
That's fair. One of the things, though, is the Suns front office. If you look back, I mean, I know it didn't look like it before the bubble, but now in the bubble, traded TJ Warren for cash considerations, bro. Like, that's like those kind of moves are reasons why I think Devin Booker might not want to stay. But I understand like the whole 5-year deal and whatnot and how that doesn't give him a hope. But still, if the front office can maybe start to figure it out. But yeah, no, the Suns they have been looking very good. I mean, they held TJ Warren to his, I think, well, now probably tied with his second lowest since he only had 12 tonight. But Suns have been looking good.
Yeah, we'll see what they do. I think one of the most interesting things about this little top 5 list is all the players that I thought would be on the list that for some reasons just didn't make it. For me, obviously, Anthony Davis was my number 1 sidekick coming into the bubble. Russell Westbrook was my number 3 sidekick. Ben Simmons was number 4. Obviously, he got hurt, so it's a little bit of different circumstances than with these other guys. But man, Anthony Davis is just. I mean, I watched that the Pacers-Lakers game a couple days ago. He looked lost in double teams. I think he had like 7 turnovers. He was settling for long mid-range shots or long twos that he was bricking the entire time. He was minus 67 differential in 6 games. The Lakers are only 2-4 and just kind of looked like a little bit of a mess.
Yeah, no, I was also surprised because, I had Anthony Davis as my number 1 too, like for pre-bubble. And yeah, no, I mean, the Lakers in general just haven't looked very good, in my opinion. I mean, I'm sure that'll change come playoff time when LeBron locks in and figures it out, but
Starts
they
playing
just
like
really
42 minutes a game.
they haven't looked like the team we saw most of the regular season prior to the whole shutdown. It's kind of sad, but again, it'll change when they hit playoff mode. And like I had Anthony Davis is 1, and I had Westbrook as 2 in my original one. And I mean, Westbrook has had some good games, but he hasn't played a whole lot when he I think he's played what 3 of their
Yeah, only
games so
3.
far.
That's the same reason why I left him off too. I couldn't do it. He didn't play enough for me to put him on here.
Yeah, no, like it didn't justify to be on the list if you've only played 3, like half of your team's games. You're not really contributing to what they're doing as much.
Yeah, definitely. Well, stick around. This was definitely a great discussion, Jim. In just a second, we'll be breaking down a little bit of the Heat-Pacers game that me and Jim both had the pleasure of, well, I guess for Jim, not the pleasure, but the Heat-Pacers game that we had the opportunity to watch tonight, as well as some of the other games that we've gotten to see in the bubble. So stick around. It's coming up in just a second.